Nothing new in the unemployment claims story. 208,000, a drop from last week. If the revisions come through, actually revisions are to 208. So no change at all in initial jobless claims from the Labor Department. Continuing claims do come in exactly the same. Now, what are the odds of that? 1,774,000 2 weeks ago, 1,774,000 last week. So right on for both the headline and continuing claims numbers. Non-farm productivity is a bit of a disappointment. It is up by 0.3%. The forecast was for 0.5%. And in the last quarter, fourth quarter, it was 3.3%. And that's the quarterly rate. Unit labor costs, therefore, rise a little bit more, 4.7%. That's up from a 0.4 gain in the prior quarter, and the 4% was the estimate. So what we're seeing there is some compensation wage pressures that would bother the Fed. Trade balance, $69.4 billion. That is basically in line with $69.5 billion in the initial report on that. So trade balance narrows a little bit, good for growth in the U.S., but I tell you, the jobless claims and the productivity numbers are telling two different stories to the Fed.
Rock solid on jobless claims at 208. Mike, I want to talk about wage pressure and wage growth tomorrow morning. You're familiar with this story. I think now is the appropriate time to have this conversation before we drown in all the numbers tomorrow. The minimum wage hike in California for fast food workers to, I think, $20 per hour. Mike McKee, I think the first month that gets pushed in April. Are you going to see any shifts around that story because of that?
Generally, we don't. It's been the case in the last couple of years that we've seen a number of states raise their minimum wage, and studies have shown it doesn't push overall wage levels up all that much, in part because it's the minimum wage. There is maybe over a period of time some marginal change, because if you're raising the lowest wage rate, you also tend to push up a little bit on higher wage rates. But in general, it's not a big thing, and we probably won't see much of a change in that.
Mike, I imagine you want to address the conspiracy theory that we've been entertaining for the past couple of minutes, this idea that maybe the Fed knew something that we didn't about the numbers that we're going to get tomorrow, that there's going to be some weakness. Do you think that there's any credence in that? These jobless claims are a head fake, that they showed strength, and yet we're going to see weakness tomorrow?
Well, I don't think they're related. Jobless claims are layoffs, and the numbers tomorrow are hirings. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that the two things are going to move in lockstep. We should see higher jobless claims if we're starting to see lower hiring. But so far, no lower jobless claims. I think the conspiracy theory is just that, a theory. I heard you talking about how the Japanese might be let in on it. I do think that the Japanese planned their intervention yesterday for after the Fed meeting, because it's interest rate differentials that are driving the yen. And so if the Fed did nothing and sounded somewhat dovish, then they get a little bit of a tailwind when they intervene.
I've got a great message regarding that conspiracy theory. It's time to start writing spy novels with that take. Mike, can we talk about your impression of the Federal Reserve yesterday? You were in the room with Chairman Powell. As you wake up this morning, what still stands out for you?
Well, I think the biggest thing, John, is that the Fed is trying to live up to its mandate of full employment and price stability, but they don't know what's going to happen. They have much less visibility on what the pattern, the trend is going to be over the next couple of months. So they don't know what they're going to do. And Jay Powell's trying to walk a very fine line. He doesn't want to encourage people who think they're going to raise rates. He doesn't want to encourage people who think they're going to cut rates, because they don't want to be caught offside and push the markets one way or another, which makes everybody in the markets unhappy, because they want to know what the Fed is going to do. And it's hard, if you don't know what you're going to do, to let people know what you are.